In management cybernetics, theorists divide systems into three categories: simple systems, complex systems, and exceedingly complex systems. In a simple or complex system, we can figure out the system's behavior and output. But in an exceedingly complex system, we have to settle for probabilities. The system's variables, interactions, and fluctuations prevent us from knowing exactly what's going on and why it's happening. Now, technology and empirical science can mask just how exceedingly complex many systems are. We want to believe that even if we don't understand the system, somebody else does, and they have coded or mapped or reasoned their way to full understanding. Disease is a perfect example of this masking influence. Germ theory teaches us that a novel bacterium or virus will enter our system and make us sick. And that's true. It's true, and it doesn't explain why some of us get sicker than others, why some of us can access treatment and some of us can't, and why one person will feel better after a week and another might start to feel better months later. Sure, there are good theories to go with each of those scenarios, but as we stack good theory upon good theory, our ability to discern the capital T truth or claim full knowledge goes down. The system is too exceedingly complex. Simple systems do exist. They're everywhere, really. But those aren't the systems that tend to trip us up. We take their functions and our understanding of them for granted. It's when we try to squeeze exceedingly complex systems into the epistemic conditions of a simple system that things get hairy. I'm Tara McMullen, and this is What Works, the show that rethinks work, business, and leadership for the 21st century economy. People are systems. And as you might guess, people are exceedingly complex systems. And yet, from software to electoral politics, marketing to organizational psychology, we often squeeze people into the conditions of a simple system. When we turn people into users, clicks, page views, targets, subscribers, voters, we often lose our awareness of their complexity. We make assumptions when we shouldn't. We turn probabilities into knowledge. We act as if we know causes when, at best, we only know correlations. With more data at our fingertips than we know what to do with, we reduce relational questions to math problems and automations. In business, this might sound like, what's the conversion rate? Instead of, are we addressing people's real needs in a way that resonates with them? It might sound like, how much does a lead cost? Instead of, how are we connecting with the people we want to serve? It might sound like, what's the organic reach? How many downloads? How many views? Instead of, does what we share answer people's real questions, tell true stories, acknowledge real frustration or desire? It might sound like, how many emails go in the sales sequence? Instead of, how do we equip people with the information they want to make a decision about whether to buy or not? We construct systems that accommodate all of these metrics, but forget that metrics are people and their behavior. People and their behaviors are diverse, unpredictable, and influenced by all sorts of things we can't anticipate. We're the products of our previous experiences and relationships, as well as reactions to the ever-changing world around us. We don't interact with companies the way their annual plans and projections are designed. We bring the day's joys, anxieties, and questions with us every time we view an ad or walk in a store. And most importantly, we bring a lifetime of hard-won wisdom with us wherever we go. Unfortunately for some, all of the complexity makes it hard to appeal to, profit from, and exploit us. It can also make it hard to help us, support us, and collaborate with us. We learn to reduce and flatten ourselves and each other to make life, in a way, a bit easier. Critical to rethinking business and leadership is examining the tendency to reduce and flatten. To build a more equitable system of exchange and needs meeting, we must devise ways to accommodate the exceeding complexity and richness of every human being. Systems of control, including capitalism, are designed to flatten us into more predictable and measurable systems. The process of exerting control is a process of reducing the available options. With fewer options, we're easier to control. Now, as a system of control, capitalism flattens beautiful, complicated people into consumers, among other things, of course. Being a consumer starts to feel natural and all-encompassing. We internalize what our consumption says about who we are and what we're about. We often find motivation for production with the fantasy of consumption. I'm going to work extra hard this week so I can afford to really treat myself on vacation. This is something done to us, but it's also something we do to others. Flattened people tend to flatten people. It's a consequence of being born into, growing up in, and building a business in relationship to this larger economic and cultural system. Code is the stuff that software is made of. And code is integral to systems of control. Systems of control use code, broadly defined, to flag certain types of input, process that input according to the system's needs, and output the desired result. Marketing systems, sales systems, political systems, management systems take my relevant traits or behaviors, run them through their code, and learn how to motivate or manipulate me to get the results they want. Systems theorist Janello Meadows says it's easier to learn about a system's elements than about its interconnections. And yeah, we've gotten very good at learning about a system's elements, especially when we're referring to people systems. Meta and Google have a literal treasure trove of information about my elements. They know I'm a homeowner, that I'm married, that I'm 42. They also know my politics, where I buy groceries, and how much Dogfish Head Slightly Mighty IPA I drink each month. The code they produce not only gathers all that data, but also identifies patterns in the data. Now, identifying patterns is not the same as understanding the interconnections between those elements of my human system. The interconnections are essential to the full humanity of my system. Code can only function on the level of patterns. Incorporating interconnections is a uniquely human capacity and a uniquely human opportunity. As I mentioned, we can think about code expansively, beyond the character strings that make up an algorithm or app. The recognition of patterns and the structuring of events based on them shape how we perceive the world. Management thinkers, consultants, and strategists have performed countless experiments and analyzed piles of data. They've then applied that scientifically gathered knowledge to the processes of branding, marketing, sales, operations, and growth. We learn about these technologies, these codes, when we read books like Start With Why, The Lean Startup, or Fascinate. And now those books are part of the source code we use to build businesses today. We use this code whenever we follow a quote-unquote proven social media procedure or sales process we learned in an online course. It's code that helps us formulate an automated email sequence or new employee onboarding. Code makes our lives easier. It helps us get things done faster and often more effectively. And yet code also tends to transform how we see other people. On Facebook, we might see an angry comment instead of someone with a personal history that's led them to make that remark. Driving along, we often see cars instead of drivers who are late for their kids' performance. With email marketing, we see open rates instead of people who have questions, needs, or prior experiences. Code transforms people into consumers and then quickly into wallets. Problems become solutions that become products to be consumed. Every problem, real or imagined by a marketer, is an opportunity to cash in. We structure our businesses to make that cycle as frictionless as possible. Our business technologies grease the gears so that we can turn people into wallets faster and with less waste. Code only knows inputs, processes, and outputs. When we use code to guide our interactions with human beings, we start to see people as inputs we can process into desired outputs. Now, code is rarely unethical or inhumane on its own. Code becomes unethical and inhumane in the way we use it. But code can be engineered in a way that produces unethical or inhumane behavior. And at that point, we have to start looking for other options. The code we use to make more money, spend less time working, and extend the reach of our brands often encourages us to view others as a means to the end we have in mind. While I won't attempt to argue that every content marketing formula, sales process, blueprint, or outsourcing system results in viewing others that way, it's common enough to cause concern. It happens every time we look for ways to earn more likes or shares. It happens when we write off people who don't buy as tire kickers or looky-loos. And it happens when we focus on conversion rates instead of delighted customers. What code are you using today that encourages you to view others as a means to your profit and influence? Losing track of the people we do business with at the expense of seeing their problems in need of solutions or their desires in need of something new to buy is a normal byproduct of the larger economic system we operate in. But by raising our awareness, we can push back and start to see people as people again. Instead of asking how we can find more followers or subscribers, we can ask ourselves why someone would want to follow or subscribe and whether we're actually delivering on that why. Instead of asking how we can delegate more of our work to our virtual assistant, we can ask ourselves who an ideal stakeholder in our work would be, or whether the work we have to delegate is meaningful or even necessary. We can seek out ways to accommodate different learning styles or communication needs. I believe we want to do business with real, complicated humans and not simplified consumers, wallets, or even quote-unquote ideal customers. We want to know and respect people as people, not inputs for code to process. So how can we reclaim a more nuanced perspective on the people who buy our products or services? A possible answer comes from the work of philosopher Kathleen Wallace. Wallace suggests that instead of seeing the self as merely biological or psychological, we can see the self as a relational network that includes biology and psychology, but also includes our relationships, personal history, interests, personality traits, and more. She writes, just as selves have different personal memories and self-awareness, they have different social and interpersonal relations, cultural backgrounds, and personalities. The latter are variable in their specificity, but are just as important to being a self as biology, memory, and self-awareness. I'm a network of my various identities, experiences, biological realities, and social constructions. I'm a woman, a feminist, a mom, a wife, and a college-educated progressive. I'm left-handed, autistic, about 5'5" on a good day, with light skin and brown hair dyed mostly blonde. My list, like yours, could go on and on. Who I am isn't the list itself, though. Who I am is the network, the interconnections. And who I am is the interconnections between those interconnections and an ever-changing world. Who I am is also my interconnection with your interconnections. It truly is exceedingly complex. I can't simplify that system without losing something core to who you are or who I am. I can't simplify it without trading some of our humanity. And yet, that's what we're trained to do as people with projects to do and products to market. The interfaces we use present metrics as facts rather than approximations. The frameworks we rely on turn unknowable systems into easy-to-follow instructions. I'm not saying we should give up on the apps we use, the interfaces we find useful, or the frameworks that guide our decision-making. But I think we should shift how we use them. We have to ask what isn't being captured in the metrics. We have to question what complexities are being masked by simplified patterns and data. A dashboard isn't a set of answers. It's the springboard for a set of questions. Adrienne Maree Brown puts it this way. We have to create futures in which everyone doesn't have to be the same kind of person. Our work, and especially our businesses, offers a chance to practice such futures. And that means wrestling with ambiguous and often conflicting ideas. We can prompt ourselves to get creative with the systems that we create and work in. We can remind ourselves that we don't share all the same bodies, histories, or experiences. Or we might provide a path toward buying that allows a customer to choose their own pace. We might design learning that accommodates different needs and styles. We might remind ourselves to consider how a customer's schedule might change when the kids go back to school. The possibilities are really endless. That comes with the systems being exceedingly complex. But that's not a bad thing. That is a huge opportunity. It is a uniquely human opportunity. Now, I don't always get this right, but I am practicing. I know that I still exclude people I don't mean to exclude, or make assumptions about what you've experienced or how you feel about things that make it more difficult to use the work I do. But little by little, I hope I'm creating more room for difference and complexity among the people I create for. And hopefully, you see yourself reflected in this work more often than not. I write this not because it's something I'm an expert at, but because it's something that I think about all the time. It's taken a lot of work to remember that what seems obvious or natural to me might be anything but for someone who has a different set of components than I do. It takes attention to consider how someone's question or email or comment might be the product of 100 different factors that I have no knowledge of. I have to practice seeing people as exceedingly complex systems to resist the masking, the flattening that comes from the code we all work in. You can practice seeing people as systems too. Practically speaking, you could try focusing on one component of other people's systems at a time. Maybe this month, you examine your work through the lens of gender or class. What are the ways that different gender expressions might intersect with the way you create? How would a different class consciousness receive your message? And then maybe next month, you dig into family history or disability. How do different family structures impact the way we see possibilities? How does chronic illness or disability impact the way someone uses what you're creating? As you practice, you'll start to internalize more humane ways of approaching your work and make it easier to let people be people, not just consumers, users, clicks, or client profiles. And bonus, you'll start to internalize yourself as an exceedingly complex system, too.